Here we are again. Let us continue talking about adjective clauses. We have already mentioned that a relative clause starts with a relative pronoun. The most common relative pronouns are who, which, that. But sometimes it is possible to start an adjective clause with where and when. Look at the sentence that we have here. I remember the cafe where we met. We are talking about a place, okay? We are talking about a cafe. I remember the cafe where we met. Where we met is an adjective clause. How do I know? Because it is after a noun. It is after the noun cafe, and it is modifying it. Cafe. It is describing cafe. I remember the cafe. Which cafe are you talking about? I remember the cafe where we met. Adjective clause after a noun. Okay? And if you're talking about time, look at what we have here. I remember the day. What day are you talking about? I remember the day when we parted. I remember the day that we parted. Or you can omit it and then you may say, I remember the day we parted. Okay? Now, when you're talking about time, then you may use when, you may use that, or you can omit it. Okay? But look at this. Remember the cafe where we met. Can we omit where? No. No, even though you have the subject of the clause, you cannot omit it. And that is something else that we have to remember. Talking about places and using where as the introductory word of an adjective clause, we cannot omit it, even though we have the subject of the clause. Okay? But what about when you're talking about time? When you're talking about the word, for example, day, then in this case, it is possible to omit it, okay? So we can say, I remember the day when we parted, I remember the day that we parted, or you just omit it, and then you say, I remember the day we parted. Let us continue. Sometimes the introductory word of the adjective clause indicates possession. If you want to indicate possession, then you use whose. Look at this. She is the woman whose son is so famous. Whose son is so famous, okay? Look at the other one. She is the woman whose son I am tutoring. What have we learned up to now? The most common relative pronouns, the words that introduce adjective clauses are who, which, and that. Sometimes the word that introduces the adjective clause can be where and when. But it is also possible to introduce the adjective clause using whose, when you want to indicate possession. Okay? So if you're talking about people, you use whose. She's the woman whose son is so famous. If you're talking about things, you use the same word, whose. It's the book whose reviews were so good. It's the book whose reviews I have just read. Let us continue. We have some information to share with you. Look at this. The woman is my sister. Simple sentence. You have woman, the subject, linking verb, sister. Okay? Look at the other sentence. The woman who is standing there is my sister. If I tell you the woman is my sister, which woman are you talking about? Okay, you need more information. I'll give it to you using an adjective clause. Who's standing there? Now you understand me better. The woman who is standing there is my sister. You understand me now. Look at this sentence, the next sentence. Maritza, who is standing there, is my sister. Okay, as you can see, who is standing there? Adjective clause. Who's standing there? Adjective clause. But there is a difference. Look at the two sentences. What is the difference? After woman, you do not have a comma. After the adjective clause, who's standing there, you do not have a comma. But look at the third sentence. Maritza, comma, who's standing there, comma, is my sister. Why do I use comma here, and why don't I use a comma in sentence number 2? Would you like to know? Okay, I will tell you. Let us see this chart. Sometimes adjective clauses identify, and sometimes they do not identify. Look at this. The woman who created that test studied psychology. Let us omit the adjective clause. What do we have left? The woman studied psychology. If I tell you that the woman studied psychology, you would ask me, who are you talking about? Okay? Then I tell you, the woman who created the test. Now you understand. Okay? So this adjective clause is identifying the woman I'm talking about. Okay? But look at the sentence. Sarah Gomez, who created the test, studied psychology. Let us omit the adjective clause. Okay? Sarah Gomez studied psychology. Would you ask me who I'm talking about? No, it is not necessary because here I have a proper noun. You know Sarah Gomez. That is a proper noun, okay? That is the name of a person. So you would understand Sarah Gomez studied psychology. So this, who created the test, is extra information, okay? You don't need the adjective clause to identify Sarah Gomez because it is a proper noun, okay? So when you are not identifying, you use comma and comma. Look at this. The test which she created describes personality types. Let us omit the adjective clause. The test describes personality types. What test are you talking about again? Okay, then I have to add the adjective clause. The test which she created, that one, okay? That test, the test that she created. Is this identifying what test I'm talking about? Yes, this adjective clause is identifying. But now look at this. The test that Sarah Gomez created has a name now. That is the Gomez test. Okay? The Gomez test, which she created, describes personality types. Now, let us omit the adjective clause. Okay? The Gomez test describes personality types. Would you ask me, what test am I talking about? No, because I'm talking about the Gomez test, okay? Then the information that you give with the adjective clause is extra information. So it is not identifying the test. The test is being identified by Gomez. So this is extra information. Then I have a comma here, and then I have another comma here. So let us recap. If the adjective clause identifies, no comma. If the adjective clause does not identify, then you have commas. Let us continue with our lesson and let us review. Okay, I'm going to give you some information. Part of it is review, and I'm going to give you some other pieces of information. Look at this. A sentence with an adjective clause can be seen as a combination of two sentences. You have, for example, John is a man. John works hard. He works hard. If you don't want to repeat John or the pronoun, you omit it, and then you use a relative pronoun, and then you have John is a man who works hard. Okay, you have one sentence instead of two. Look at this other sentence. And here you have two. Mary is interesting. I like Mary a lot. Mary is interesting. I like her a lot. Okay, here you have two basic sentences, two simple sentences. But I know English. I mean, I'm learning, so I can use more sophisticated, more complex sentences. So instead of using two simple sentences, I'm going to combine them and use only one. Okay? I'm going to use a complex sentence because I know more English. And then I say, Mary, whom I like a lot, is interesting. Okay? You use an adjective clause when you want to combine two pieces of information. Mary is interesting. I like Mary a lot. Okay? Then you combine them. You use the second sentence as an adjective clause, and then you say, Mary, whom I like a lot, is interesting. Why do I have commas here? Because I have a proper noun, Mary. Okay, we already know who Mary is, so this is extra information, and that is why I have commas. Okay, that is something that you already know. I was just reviewing. Now, something that may be new to you. An adjective clause is a dependent clause. A noun clause is a dependent clause. An adverb clause is a dependent clause. All of them are called dependent clauses. An adjective clause is a dependent clause, and it modifies what? A noun or pronoun in a main clause. Okay, look at the example here. Frank, who is an introvert, spends a lot of time alone. Let's do something. Let's do something that is fun. Okay? One characteristic of an adjective clause is that it is found after a noun like Frank or a pronoun like something. Okay? Something is very general. So when you say that is fun, you're identifying something, so you don't need a comma. Frank is a proper noun. You already know who the person is, so the information given by the adjective clause is extra, so you use comma. Okay, that is something that we know perfectly now. Let us continue with another grammar note. An adjective clause often begins with a relative pronoun. The most common ones, whom, who, which, that. But it is possible to begin an adjective clause with some other words like whose, when you are denoting possession, when you're dealing with time, and when you're dealing with place. Something else to remember, the word that begins an adjective clause usually comes directly after the noun or pronoun that the clause modifies. For example, Toronto, which is the largest city in Canada, is a beautiful place. Adjective clause, which is the largest city in Canada. Noun being modified, Toronto. So remember, the adjective clause is after the noun being modified. This is a proper noun, that is why you have comma, and that is why you have comma. The comma isolates. The comma identifies the adjective clause. Is it possible to omit an adjective clause? Yes, look at this. Toronto is a beautiful place. It is possible to omit an adjective clause. Now, let us see another one. Let us see something else. An adjective clause can occur after a main clause or inside a main clause. Remember that the adjective clause has to be just after the noun being modified. Sonia is a woman whom I respect. Who do I respect? this woman I'm talking about, okay? So the whom I respect is modifying, is describing woman. Look at this sentence. Let us omit the adjective. The house is in San Salvador. What house are you talking about? The house that we bought, okay? The house that we bought is in San Salvador. What did we buy? The house. This is an adjective clause modifying house, okay? What happens if I don't want to follow the rule or to obey the rule and then we place but at the end? Look at this. The house is in San Salvador that we bought. It sounds like you bought San Salvador, and that is not true. I bought the house, okay? So the adjective has to follow the noun being modified. We have come again to the end of the lesson. I hope that you found it interesting and useful. That would be all for today. Bye.